Hello, welcome to Hot Topics, where we discuss what's going on at Hello, the virtual space for early childhood professionals. My name is Lark Sontag. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at National Association for the Education of Young Children. This month's Hot Topic is challenges we face as leaders in ECE settings, and we're talking to Iris and Debbie, authors of From Survive to Thrive, a director's guide for leading an early childhood program. But before we chat, I'm going to read their bios. Iris Chin, Ponte PhD, is a director and classroom teacher at the Henry Frost Children's Program in Belmont, Massachusetts. She also currently serves as an adjunct faculty member at Lesley University's Graduate School of Education. Iris previously worked for Sesame Street Research at the Children's Television Workshop, now Sesame Workshop in New York, among other media and research institutions. Debbie LeeKeenan is an early childhood consultant, lecturer, and author. She has been in the field of early childhood education for 45 years. She is a former preschool and elementary school teacher. She was the director and lecturer of the Elliott Pearson's School at Tufts University from 1996 to 2013. She also held academic positions at Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. Her work has been published in numerous journals and books, including Young Children, Child Care Exchange, Theory and Practice, and the first edition of the 100 Languages of Children, the Reggio Emilia approach to early childhood education, in addition to From Survive to Thrive, her most recent book, co-authored with Louis Dermond Sparks and John Niman, is Leading Anti-Bias Early Childhood Education Programs, a Guide for Change. So thank you so much for coming here, Debbie and Iris, and speaking to us on our first Hot Topics. So we're just gonna jump right in. Priscilla from California has a question. What are leadership qualities that you need if you're an administrator or director? Like, what do you need to have to be a leader, a good leader?
Sure. For many of us, we might have started off in the classroom or in other roles in early childhood and never dreamed that we would be an administrator or be in a director seat. But one thing that we found is that there are some leadership qualities that are shared across many directors and early childhood leaders in our country. We found that the qualities of organization, being hardworking, being a visionary and determined, really able to set priorities, so figuring out, what has to happen in what order. Being creative and resourceful are also very important. And of course, being able to work well with people. Finally, a quality that a lot of people often overlook is being able to be resilient in the face of challenges and hard times, and being able to be reflective upon your own goals and your career over time are other really important characteristics to being able to be a successful administrator in early childhood.
Those are great, great tips, because those are things you can develop. You can get how develop them, because sometimes you're like, well, you just have to be born a leader. And that's not really necessarily the case all the time. Okay, so Debbie, we're going to talk about anti-bias. This is from the Family Child Care Interest Forum. How do you encourage anti-bias in programming, and how do you get buy-in from staff for anti-bias practices?
Great question. First of all, we all know anti-bias education is not just a curriculum. It's a stance. It's how we set up the classroom, the materials and books we use, how we develop curriculum, how we interact with children, families, and each other. Learning from and with families is a key foundational concept in anti-bias work, and making sure every child and their family are seen and visible. It must be embedded in our mission, our policies and practices, how we hire, how we do professional development. It's just, as I said, a part of everything we do. So this change has to happen from both what we say a top-down and bottom-up approach. You need both the leadership and the grassroots investment. As leaders, we need to create opportunities for staff to have buy-in to anti-bias values. So for example, I try to notice what staff are already doing. I may see a teacher reading a book. Let's say it's The Sandwich Shop, which is written by Queen Reina Abdallah and Kelly DiPuccio. It's about two girls, one child eating a peanut butter sandwich and another child eating a hummus sandwich. I would provide some positive reinforcement about that choice of book to the teacher. I might mention that it's great. This kind of book can provide both mirrors and windows to your class. And I'd also ask the teacher, what would you do next? How would you follow up? I'd want to build on the teacher's ideas and initiative. I also think it's important to balance taking charge and saying what to do as the leader and challenging staff. How would you do this differently? And of course, giving positive affirmation. You took a big risk in trying that. I would also try and be aware of those staff who are silent. What are they thinking and feeling? How could we engage in a dialogue? Basically, we try and keep anti-bias conversations on the forefront and part of how we live our values on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. That's great, because it's not just we're just going to do it on Black History Month or doing Asian American History Month or doing women's. It's an all kind of a thing. It's not like a food thing either.
Right.
So that's great. So Iris, I'm going to it's a similar question from a director. As a director, I've had resistance, and this is from a director, not me. As a director, I had resistance when I brought in trainers on diversity subjects. No one explicitly said no, but I felt resistance. How do we as directors of small centers break that barrier?
Yeah, I think to piggyback on what Debbie was talking about, an anti-bias approach, this work should never fall directly onto a training session or a special event. That when people really or staff shows sort of resistance to certain areas, it's really important to find out what is it that your staff might be nervous about or hesitant about. Is there something they're afraid of? And I think this is part of the skill of being a really good listener to thinking about and hearing their doubts and concerns, because sometimes those fears might not necessarily be verbalized. What we do in our school is that we often will start staff meetings with opportunities to share our own reflections in our own lives and experiences with diversity and our own identities. And you can ask questions like, growing up, when did you first notice that someone was different from you? What did you feel? What did the adults around you say, or how did they respond? And what do children say when they notice someone is different from them? By offering prompts like this in a safe space during a staff meeting with colleagues and trusted leaders, sometimes you have more opportunities to open up to each other before you bring in an external consultant or have a training workshop. I think also it's really important to remember that the anti-bias journey is not just for our students and families, but for ourselves and working on our own identities. And so it's not just about thinking about curriculum activities. It's not just about having that multicultural potluck in your school. It's the daily work of our entire community.
Good point. So another question, Iris, to Iris. How do you get people to rise above what you need from them? Like, no one wants to be that guy, but I feel, this is from James from the Bronx again. No one wants to be that guy, but I feel sometimes to become that guy, you become, you have to come back from break on time. You have to call if you're not coming in. The challenge is when you're in charge, but your title doesn't say you're in charge. Like maybe you're in a different kind of environment where it's kind of like, we're all facilitators. No one's in charge, but someone kind of is in charge. So how do you work that out? Stuff is not necessarily budget, but just day to day, getting the classroom to work correctly when you're kind of the leader, but not necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's one of the trickiest parts of the job. I think for many of us, especially for new leaders and directors, we can swing back and forth from really wanting to be a friend and to be cool and be part of the gang. And then we can swing to the other side and say, wait a second, I'm the boss. I have to keep the ship running. And if not, we're all going down. And so we swing between these two sort of roles. And I think in the end, after being a newer director in the field, I've experienced both of those emotions. And what I found over time is that the facilitative leadership model really works, because what that means is that we're creating a community as it's really exemplifying that we're all in this together, that it's not just one person. And you really want to establish norms in an atmosphere where the expectations are clear, maybe in your staff handbook or in all of these meetings, but that also the voices are clear and they're shared and there's opportunities for everyone to be heard. We're all responsible for making our program work. We all have to have buy-in. We all need to have a larger vision. And so when you offer your teachers that sort of autonomy of their own classroom and offering them some control in that way, you hope that they will rise to the occasion. You hope that by creating that sort of environment that it happens naturally. With that said, there are times where, you know, someone might not be pulling their weight, or they're not coming in time, and it's having a huge impact on their co-teachers and their classroom and students. And those are the moments where you have to have a really good foundation of communication as their director, so that you can say, hey, would you mind meeting with me this afternoon? There's a few things I would love to touch base with you on, and having a conversation. And I think it's better to do that than for the resentment to build and become more challenging. So it's a very careful balance, but I really believe that the facilitative leadership model sets you up for success, so that when those conversations happen, it's a lot more productive.
Yes. Because I mean, you know, the thing is that in the classroom, that's kind of like the number one thing people really talk about. So it's, you know, like, it's a small thing, but it's actually so huge. So that was really useful, kind of like looking at the facilitator model as a way to be a really good leader. So thanks for that answer. So Debbie, I'm going to kind of jump. I'm getting all these great questions from our interest forum. So one person's asking, saying, I'm one of 2 directors. I have a hard time with these challenges. People come late, not turning in paperwork, going for the choir, or doing a webinar. I don't want to be constantly reminding them to do things, but when we have a discussion, what we expect, and the next day the staff are back to their old ways, it gets so frustrating. So I mean, I guess a facilitator idea, but you know, Debbie, what do you have to say? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll give a little some more specifics maybe. Okay. So for some things like coming to work on time, that's a given. It's part of their job description. If it happened, I would speak with the staff member when it happens. And if this is a problem on a regular basis, I'd help set up some consequences. But I wouldn't be always the one to say, here's the quote consequence. I would ask them what they would do if they were in my shoes. I turn the problem back to the staff. And I do this even if it's a one-on-one situation or as a group. Kind of have them try to think, well, how do you think we can solve this problem? For other things, a tangible group reward can also be motivating. Mm-hmm. Like, let's say, for example, when everyone needs to get their classroom portfolios done for an accreditation visit, we can say when it's all done, we'll have a catered lunch, or, you know, we'll have some kind of special picnic, or go to the movies, you know, kind of do some kind of have a tangible group reward. So the point is that sometimes we can be flexible, but at other times we must hold the line. But all the time, letting our staff know that they're a valued part of this community. And as Iris already referenced, when one person doesn't do their part, it affects everyone.
Yes, that's true. Now we kind of want to switch gears. We have an interesting question from the Play Practice Policy Interest Forum. As educators, and I'm going to put this to Iris, as educators, we encourage play all day long for our children and explain the benefits to their parents. How do you make time for yourself to play as directors and administrators? How do you encourage your staff to play?
Great question. I think we have to step back and really consider what we mean by play and how we define it. And we have to sort of unpackage what are the elements of play for both children and adults. They're risk-taking, messing around, not being afraid of failure, loose parts, and just having genuine joy. I think when we model those moments in staff meetings and really having opportunities to try out new materials, or let's try making different kinds of sensory opportunities and really roll up our sleeves and try it, I think we model sort of loosening up and giving new things a shot and taking risks and mixing Elmer's glue with starch and all this kinds of oobleck stuff. And I think when we have the chance to go into classrooms to observe and be part of our classroom communities, really modeling that sort of well-being and joy with young children, giving permission to kneel down in dramatic play and put on that costume and or be in the block area and just participate. I think when we do that, we give our staff permission to play. I think there's other ways adults play too, and just in documentation. It's so much fun to watch our learners participate and experience play through our students, and giving teachers opportunities to do the documentation so that we really can be participatory in that way as well. I think we have a lot of options, and in our staffing chapter, we talk a lot about different opportunities for exciting professional development and really considering, like, what could we do? Could we go for a hike first and then talk about bringing nature into the classroom? Or if we're going to learn about how to use the parachute, well, let's do it. Like, let's try it out and see how it feels. I think that when you build it into your workshops and your staff meetings and the way you observe the classroom, then we're all having fun together, and that feels great.
I love the hiking idea. I'm like, yeah, let's go on a hike, and then we can talk about hiking for kids.
Yeah, then you can show me what poison ivy really looks like.
Exactly. For people on the West Coast, I think we're a little bit not as knowledgeable on certain things in regards to nature on the East Coast. Like, it's so much more. Okay, I'm going off topic. All right. Debbie, I'm going to go to a question from the Young Children's Spirituality Forum. And they're asking, I'm one of the facilitators of the Young Children's Spirituality Interest Forum. I believe that spiritual development is at the heart of all developmental domains, thus all learning. For me, this means that all early childhood education programs must be welcoming, loving spaces that offer children and their families space and time to engage in spiritual moments. What does spirituality look like to you as an early childhood educator, and what might be a spiritual moment?
I think the word spirituality can take on many different meanings for many different people. Some people find spirituality in their religion, while others express spirituality as a universal human experience that connects us all, something bigger than ourselves. For me, this question is also about allowing different identities and perspectives into the workplace and our program. Mindfulness is another term that's connected to this, being very present and intentional in our interactions with each other, and having time for reflection and calmness, time for solitude, as well as time for sharing. So we can incorporate this in our staff meetings, how we begin the day, whether we're doing that with children or with each other, how we greet each other. I know, Iris, you had a couple specific, an area of your classroom that you call the peace area. Can you share a little bit about what that looks like? I think that'd be helpful.
Sure. In recent years in our school, we found that, there were a lot of opportunities for children to have group play or dyadic work, but there was nowhere for them to go and just have some time to reset and be alone. Of course, we had a library and those kinds of opportunities, but we really wanted to be more specific. So we designed a corner with a little stool and table where children can go just by themselves when they need to be recentered. We have little oil timers and little electric candles they can switch on to try some deep breathing exercises, to just appreciate something beautiful and aesthetic. Sometimes there's some flowers or lavender sachets so they can just find that sort of peace. And, children and adults alike, we go through a lot of things in our lives, and we're together daily, and having a place that's safe to find that sanctuary and that quiet is very spiritual, and teachers and children use it alike, and it's been very successful in our classroom.
That sounds wonderful. I want to go to that classroom. So Iris, kind of moving a little bit to another topic. This is just from a person who was on Hello. I also received a resignation letter. I received resignation of a staff member who was definitely a positive asset to my kitchen and meal service. She would like to change career. So tell me, how do you move through your day and support these moments in your center? You're an amazing person. Why are you leaving?
Yeah, I find that in our roles, we don't really like change. That we invest a lot into the people around us, and we build relationships so that when these things happen, of course, we're disappointed, but we also have to remember to be supportive. That if things have gone really well and it's just a life change that was inevitable, there's nothing you can really do about it except that, treat them with respect and be grateful and thankful to them for their efforts and hard work. And I think you also have to sort of switch in your mind, yes, change is happening, but this is also an opportunity to improve this role. What went well? for you? What advice do you have before you leave to improve this position so that we can make it even better? What did you learn over the years was really effective? And, what could we tweak a little bit for the next person? Would you share that with me? So exit interviews are really important for that. Now, that's in the case where the person is resigning for a personal life change or things like that. If they're leaving because they're unhappy, I think that's a different kind of opportunity to improve your own work and your own practice, to really consider, was there something I could have done to make this individual's experience more rewarding, more challenging? How could I tweak the way I support my staff members so that they will stay with our program longer? So I think it really depends on the reason for the resignation, but regardless of which direction, taking them on as learning opportunities is an important mindset to have.
No, I think that's really wonderful, because I think a lot of times when we are managing people, do we really reflect enough on the idea, maybe it was me, maybe something I did too, because no one wants to think that about themselves. So I think that's also an important part. So thank you for that information, and to kind of take that step back and kind of look like, what am I doing as a manager? So Debbie, I kind of on the same, wavelength. Once you've navigated the challenge of attracting staff to your program, how do you help them feel supported during the initial onboarding process and throughout their first few months of employment? How do you ensure your staff continues to be engaged? And this is from Lorraine.
Okay. Well, there are many ways to help new staff feel part of your school community. Assigning them to a teacher that has been with your program for a while is helpful. It's like having a buddy. It gives the staff member a peer to go to right from the start. They have questions, and they don't want to bother you, the director, or they feel embarrassed, they can go to a peer. We also want to try to make staff meetings really meaningful, and that everyone's time is precious. So if we have a staff meeting, we want to make sure everyone gets something out of it. It's also important to make time for social experiences. And then also checking in with your new staff on a regular basis is also key, particularly those first couple months. Asking them how things are going, what's working, what's not working. Also, a clearly written staff handbook is also critical and often overlooked by some of the most well-established programs. When your staff handbook is clear, the expectations are clear. Also, we think it's important to always review your contracts annually and make sure that they really fit the job expectations. Another point is to find out early from the new staff member, why did they come to the center? What attracted them? What are their professional goals? And then, how can I help you meet those goals at our center? As your supervisor, how can I support you? Ask them again, it's this concept of what's working, what's not working. And at that same time, I think it's okay for you to share your own challenges. This shows them that we're all lifelong learners. We're always working on improving our professional careers, our lives, and allowing them to be their authentic self. And this concept of the professional goal process, which we do talk a lot about in the book, really is something that's ongoing and has to be done every year to keep them engaged, that there's always new things we want to set goals for and to work on.
Yes. And I love the whole staff handbook. Like, that's something you really don't think about. Maybe some people don't think about it. Okay. I wouldn't really think about it. But now I'd be like, okay, staff handbook, budget, facilitating, great tips in the book. So now we're going to go to Iris. As another person who's kind of this is not a personal interest forum, but just generally in Hello. As childcare providers, we need our front-facing staff, the executives of our services and facilitators of our programs to be in good spirits, mind and body. We have a responsibility as employers to ensure we do our part in supporting their personal and professional growth and development. So what does that look like for us?
And I think we've had strands of this throughout our whole conversation this afternoon. It's the whole professional learning community, empowerment through facilitative leadership, incorporating play and joy, places for peace, places for, clarity in terms of our roles as part of the school community, but there's also things we can do that are small. A surprise breakfast, thank you so much, out of nowhere, a little note. As teachers move along, you just see something spectacular happening in one of their rooms, let them know. So the dialogue between you as a leader and your staff isn't always either punitive or fix this, fix that. It can be, that was an amazing lesson. I really enjoyed watching you. And those interactions go a really long way. Just to piggyback again on Debbie, really supporting their own personal goals on those goals form. I cannot speak more highly of that. Listening and offering specific professional development based on your teacher's individual interests. Using your networks to pour out those supports really helps your staff feel heard, valued, and furthered in their development as educators. I really think small stuff can go a long way.
It can. I mean, as a person who's worked for other people go, yeah, you did a great job. I'm like, oh, okay. It actually makes you feel really happy. And so yes, very, very important. So Debbie, we're gonna go back to you because we had a whole thread on self-care. What's self-care and what does that look like? Because people in early childhood education, we're so giving, like, oh, what do you need? What do you need me to do? Like, I'll do some more. Like, how do we care about ourselves?
Yeah. So as we know, being a program leader is a juggling act. We need to keep all aspects of the job in focus while recognizing we can't do everything at once. So I often been known to use this term rotated neglect. And that concept means putting some of those tasks on the back burner while attending to others, and then continually kind of switching it up. We just need to be sure we are not always neglecting the same things all the time. And often what gets neglected is taking care of yourself. So I like to include personal and family time as part of this equation. Don't let the personal time or taking care of your needs be the one that is always neglected. Another way to build your self-care strategies is to feel comfortable asking for help. I think this is something we are not always comfortable doing. So when we model that, I need someone else. It's a team approach here. It also focuses on not just self-care, but creating that community care. Being able to set personal boundaries. For example, when I'm not going to do email, when I'm going to turn my computer off or my phone off. And again, when we model these self-care methods, it also sends our message to our staff that we all feel it's important. And from you feel it's important to develop a balanced life. And of course, this helps prevent burnout, which is what we don't want either for the leader or for the staff.
Yes, so important. Those are all important points. I know people are like, oh, you just keep saying. I'm like, no, these are actually really, because things we really don't think about. I've seen people, especially family childcare providers, it's just essentially be open like 24 hours a day.
Right.
And, it's kind of like, at what point are you helping? Not even, you're busy. You're not necessarily just being open 24 hours a day. It's not necessarily helping your bottom line or even helping the people that you're trying to help.
Yeah.
So that's always very important. So this is a question for me. So why did Debbie and Iris write this book?
Well, we felt there was a need for a book that was both practical and accessible, but also had a theoretical rationale and framework for why we do what we do. And we wanted to be able to make this book that wasn't too big, but that you could get the background, the meat of why this is important, but then give you some tips you can use tomorrow. I felt, I wanted to share some of the things I had learned over my many years as a director and educator, and also things that I've learned from the many program leaders we had an opportunity to meet over the years. And particularly for this project, we were honored to be able to interview many leaders across the country. So a lot of the ideas came from not just our experiences, but kind of be able to hear from everyone. And I always like to say it really was a special project to be able to do this work with Iris, who had been one of my former students at Tufts, and now, of course, a revered colleague and friend.
That's amazing. I mean, and you, Debbie, like, I mean, not you, I mean, you, Iris, why did you write this book? I love the story that you guys, that she was your mentor, and guys, like,
So,
writing a book.
it's funny to look back. This text took us, 3 years of hard work and a lot of love and a lot of support from colleagues across the whole country, hours of interviews, talking to people about their lived experiences in these roles. And for me, as a newer director, up against Debbie's established, long commitment to the field, it was a privilege and an honor to be able to hear from everyone, how do we do this? What is this going to look like for us who want to carry the torch into the future? How do we go about setting up these communities of joy and support for families and young children? And I found that we're a community of early education leaders that rarely reach out to one another because we're so busy and because we're not sure who to call and ask. And so I really felt strongly that this book, like Debbie said, has to be both research-driven and applied. And in that integration, we really have a piece of work that is easy to use and has real examples and opportunities to improve our practice. And it's been really a joy to be part of this journey, and I've learned so much.
And so, Debbie and Iris, anything you want to leave us with? Like, you're going to be anywhere?
Well, yeah, actually, I did want to let people know we're doing a pre-conference session at the PLI in Long Beach on June 1st, based on the book From Survive to Thrive. So if you're planning to go to the conference, please come join us the day before. I think there's still some space. So I'm really looking forward to that, to be able to, again, meet other directors, hear what current issues are, what's working, what's not working. So that should be fun. And then I also just want to, I guess my final words and what I'd like to leave everyone with is that you really make a difference. A leader has a huge impact with every decision you make. I like to think of it as the pebble in the pond, those rippling effects, because we have the big picture, but we also need to keep all those parts moving. I'll call on my heritage. There's an old Chinese saying, man man lai, which literally means slowly it will come. To me, in terms of leadership and working with programs, it means we must appreciate the small steps every day along the way that lead to the bigger movement. Iris?
So I will be in June in Boise, Idaho, from the 13th to the 15th for their AC. We'll be speaking more on curriculum development in our program, and super excited about that. And hopefully at NAEYC in November. And my closing comment is, at the end of the day, program leaders really are the big-hearted, and we come into this field to support early education and the families and children that we love. But at the same time, while we give to others, do not lose sight of your own well-being. Because when you care for yourself, you can do even a better job caring for those around you. And when that happens, your programs will flourish, you will feel healthier and happier, and it will all be good. And we're all in it together. So don't forget to reach out if you need us. Debbie and I are fairly easy to find online, and we really want to hear what people think about our text and how they're using it. So don't hesitate to let us know.
Well, thank you so much, Debbie and Iris, for coming to the first Hot Topic discussion, and which is amazing. It's awesome. Thank you for all the information. Thank you for all your hard work that you've done in early childhood education. Let's see those books. Show us those books.
It's nice and
and you see, it's easy to read. It's not complicated. It's read. Put it in your desk and like, oh, what can I do? I'm having this problem. And just so, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.